Good evening, Indiana. Welcome to the Who's Left podcast, a show about Indiana politics, history, and culture from an unapologetically leftist perspective. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers, and I'm broadcasting from Bloomington. Spoiler alert, the American healthcare system is completely broken, and in Indiana, it's even more broken than in neighboring states. That is, despite, or maybe because of, the presence of pharmaceutical giant Eli Lilly and insurance behemoth Elevance, both headquartered in Indianapolis. The bubblegum and duct tape holding our healthcare infrastructure together are the dedicated people doing their best in a completely dysfunctional system, none working harder than nurses, and I don't just say that because my wife is a nurse and I'd like to sleep in my own bed tonight. My guest this evening is also a nurse. Different areas of care, but same systemic hurdles to navigate. Katie Robbins is a critical care nurse and single mom. Her whole life is dedicated to caring for others. Somehow, amidst all that, she's also running for State House in Indiana District 31, centered in Marion in the northeast central part of the state. In a legislature where few of the people making the decisions actually have to deal with the negative ramifications of those decisions, Katie is looking to bring her real-world perspective to the General Assembly. In the following conversation, we'll talk about the difficulties she faces as a caregiver in a dog-eat-dog society that often seems to not care. But before we get there, if you care about independent progressive media, we could use your help. We don't paywall content here at Who's Left. We don't charge candidates for interviews, and we certainly don't have billionaire benefactors. We refuse to hide important information behind paywalls in the middle of a political crisis, even to our financial detriment. So please, if you find value in this work, go to progressiveindiana.net and subscribe at the paid level. It's only $5 a month or $50 a year to help us build the infrastructure that will pop the right-wing media bubble in this state. And while a paid subscription is the best way to help us grow and sustain this project, you can help in other ways by liking and sharing on social media, commenting, leaving reviews, providing feedback, and forwarding our content to your people. Get us when you can. Mostly, we just want you here in this community of Hoosiers dedicated to making this state and its government work for all of us, not just the elite few. Please join us. Follow me on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads at whosleft.us and on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Who's Left. Progressive Indiana Network's handle is the full spelled out name on most sites, but on Blue Sky and TikTok, it's PIN Indiana. Please help us grow with a follow wherever you're at. Tell the others. Let's build a radically democratic Indiana together. Now, nurses might be superheroes, but they can't be in two places at once. Katie's son is playing in a baseball game as we speak. We recorded this interview Sunday night. Here is my conversation with Katie Robbins. There we are with Katie Robbins. Katie, thanks for joining me here tonight on the Who's Left podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It was good to see you on the Sunday show. I'm glad the two of us get to spend a little more time sort of digging in to stuff that's important to Hoosiers. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about healthcare tonight because you are a nurse, and this is also a profession that's near and dear to me. So before we get into all that, just tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
So I am Katie. I live in Marion. So I am running for House District 31 to be state representative. So Marion is in Grant County. So it's about, I always say it's in between Muncie and Fort Wayne. And it's a little town there. That's an old factory town. They have GM here and a couple other factories. I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for 6 years. I've worked in healthcare for 8, I think. I'm a single mom. My son is 7 years old. He just turned 7 a couple weeks ago. So yeah, I decided to run because I am absolutely sick and tired of feeling underrepresented and just feeling like my voice doesn't matter. And, you know, the seat has been uncontested for 8 years and I wanted, why not? That's exactly how I looked at it. Just why not?
Well, and you know what? I say it all the time here that we need more regular people in politics. We need more nurses. We need more teachers. We need more contractors and construction workers and plumbers and whatever. The decisions are made in Indianapolis and in Washington as well, and I think the consequences of those decisions are rarely felt by the people that are making them. It's folks like us that have to carry the burden when decisions are made poorly. If you look at something like Mike Braun's property tax law. 2 years ago, they sold it as like tax reform, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're gonna lower property taxes for Hoosier voters, and listen, a lot of homeowners got something like $200 to $300 worth of tax relief spread across a whole year's worth of taxes, and frankly, the property values going up has basically eaten that away. But what has happened is that schools and hospitals and public services are coming up short. Anything that local tax dollars are paying for, they're now having to raise local taxes. The schools are going to have to beg for referendum money every couple of years. And, I think folks hear things like, ooh, tax cut. I hate taxes. Yeah, let's do that. And, it sounds good in the short term, but then when you actually have to deal with the repercussions of it, oh man, it turns out taxes are kind of necessary for the basic functioning of society.
Yes. Yeah. That is one of the reasons I started as a new grad nurse in the ICU. So my main background and kind of like my bread and butter of healthcare is critical care. I've worked in critical care pretty much my entire career for other than the last few months. I have worked resource and just kind of floated throughout the hospital. And I started in 2020, January of 2020, and it was
something going on then?
yeah, a once in a lifetime pandemic and the president telling people to inject themselves with bleach. And it was a fun time. People were wearing pads on their face instead of masks. They were mad because they had to wear a mask. And I worked in ICU. We ran out of ventilators. It was not a fun time. It was quite literally one of the most radicalizing. That was my radicalizing moment in my life, that I was like, oh, these people don't care about us. The people who are making the laws really don't understand how they have to deal with that. And that's kind of what drove me to be politically active, was working in the hospital during that time, because it was horrible. It was quite literally the worst time. And horrible.
And it just the pandemic, I think, really highlighted the shortcomings of the American healthcare system at large. I mean, we spend more money per capita on healthcare in this country than anywhere in the world, and theoretically, more money should buy you better outcomes, but alas, it does not. In fact, we handled the pandemic worse than anywhere in the world, especially for, Western industrialized rich countries that have, modern healthcare systems, as it were. We more than 1 million people died from COVID in this country, and we've never really reckoned with it. I think that's just the nature of capitalism in America. Is like you sweep it under the rug and you keep plowing ahead, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even just as a nurse, we always say, if we don't laugh, we cry, because we have a very different sense of humor, the way we handle the entire workload and the entire just physical, emotional, mental toll that we get from working at the bedside. And, COVID really was where it's always been like that, but that's where it really just it blossomed, because the only way that we could have gotten through that was if we had each other. And that was where I made like some of the best friendships that I have because of that time that we had each other. And it's something that we as a country just haven't. People still
little
think it's not
trauma
real.
bonding among friends, right? It's like going to war together.
It literally is. And I, even afterwards, when I had gone to see a therapist as time had gone on, and I mean, she literally told me, she said, that was a very traumatic time in your life. Because it was. I was waking up in the middle of the night with dreams that we were coding people, and it was horrible, quite literally the worst. And, we just haven't, people still don't think it's a real thing. And I'm like, I saw it. I saw it. I dealt with it. I was there. I remember.
And we went from, right at the beginning of the pandemic. I remember in New York especially, they'd have the hero parades for the healthcare workers there, right? And folks in your line of duty, your profession, were being hailed as the heroes that they were. Yet as the months wore on, and the disinformation around COVID started to spread, and you'd get all these crazy conspiracy theories out there. Folks would not just like ignore the advice of healthcare professionals. They would openly flout it, resent it, and think that I don't know, like think like injecting bleach. Oh my God, I was at a holiday party yesterday, and some guy was touting the effects of like ivermectin, and it just took everything in my all my power to be like, not here, not today, man.
Not today. Not today. Not in the year of our Lord 2026. Absolutely not.
And so so much of that, I think, is because folks have had bad experiences in the healthcare industry, and it's not because of frontline folks like nurses, like CNAs, like doctors who are actually, there treating the patients. It's because of all the other bullcrap surrounding healthcare in this country that causes folks to resent and disrespect the profession.
Yeah. Honestly, it's the entire healthcare system as a whole is just so utterly broken. That's something I think anybody, no matter what your experience in life has been, you can understand and see that and feel that or have felt that at some point in your life. And it isn't the nurses and the doctors and the CNAs and all of the support staff there. It is the people at the top who are making the decisions, who are sitting behind a desk in an office and making every decision and not actually being there on the floor to feel the repercussions of that decision, like taking away mandatory safe staffing and stuff. They aren't there to understand. Yeah, it might save you some money, but in the long run, you might be so short one night someone falls and dies. Like there are just so many things that don't get taken into consideration by the people who make these decisions because they're not there. They don't understand. They quite literally cannot understand what it's like to be there on the front lines, working it and living with their decisions.
And well, I think you're talking about, don't want to get you in trouble, but listen, my wife's a nurse too, so I hear these things as well. You are in critical care. She is in but not necessarily end of life care all the time. She works at a skilled nursing facility, so there's all sorts of various folks, older typically, but in various stages of their healthcare journey there. So yeah, you get some hospice and you get other people that are in rehab from surgery and stuff. So it's not all end of life care, but I think what cuts across all kinds of nursing care is that you have to deal with the administrators. You have to deal with the higher ups, and it's the folks who don't really know what it's like on the floor to have somebody's life in your hands. They're just looking at spreadsheets. They're looking at bottom lines. They're looking at budgets, and it's a business for them, and they have to run it in such a way as to be maximally profitable. That is their fiduciary duty in many ways, and I think oftentimes, if not all of the time, those two things come into conflict.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, and everything that I say is my own opinion and does not reflect my employer. Just a disclaimer there. But that's something that, like you said, it cuts across anybody who, and even it's not even just nursing. It is pretty much in any type of job. My dad was a radio designer for many years, and he worked for Delco, but then Delphi bought it out or something or another like that. And he never got unionized, but some people did get unionized, but he didn't because of some reason or another. I don't remember. And, when they closed down, he was the first to go. There's always someone that is at the bottom of the totem pole there. And it is, if an adverse event or a sentinel event happens because of lack of staffing, or you can't find another person because they're busy taking care of their patients, and you can't find another person to do a double med check, but you say, oh, I'll have them sign off on it later. Well, you make a huge error, and that comes back to you, and that comes back to them, and you could really lose your job for that, and also lose your license for just something that at the end of the day was truly out of your hands because you guys are so short that someone is not out in the open that you can get. And it is the people at the top who just look at the bottom line, and the bottom line is the number to them and not the person or the people in the building every single day doing the work.
My wife talks about this all the time, the things, just about anything. Any kind of small mistake can cost you your license, and it winds up that the buck often stops with folks like nurses when the folks managing the bucks are making decisions that affect the day-to-day operations of the facility and put extra strain on the staff and leave you short, and things like that make mistakes more apt to happen. And I'm glad you mentioned your dad and the union aspect of this, because obviously Indiana is a quote unquote right to work state, meaning that the nuts and bolts of that is that unions can't automatically deduct dues from paychecks of their workers, and as such, and folks can opt out. You can't have closed shops where only unionized employees can get in there. And I think about how the nurses and folks in positions like you are sort of stuck dealing with the repercussions of decisions made by higher ups and don't have any sort of collective bargaining power to push back. There are nurses unions that are certainly more powerful in certain places, and they can advocate for things like staffing minimums and nurse to patient ratios, and you look at places that have those. California has a strong nurses union presence. New York, mostly blue states, go figure. Well, looks like those places, one, have better healthcare outcomes, but two, better quality of working environment for the nurses, and three, better pay for the nurses as well.
Yeah, it not having that ability to feel like you have protection. It is you versus, it can come down to you versus an entire corporation that takes up the whole state. That if you make, and sometimes if you make one mistake, you get fired, you can get blacklisted from the entire system. And that could really, really diminish your chances of even finding a job where you live, and depending on who your employer is and that. So it really just not having the ability to easily organize and unionize just in general in Indiana, but it would make such a huge difference if we did. The pay, that's one of the things that really, it's a very hard job, and nursing is not easy anywhere, no matter what kind of nursing you do, no matter what specialty you do, it's not easy. And it would be nice to make a little bit more money, I will say. And it's just not, when you don't have, a union or collective bargaining to be able to advocate for the employers, the nurses, and it's you versus an entire system.
I think we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, and you said that nurses in our neighboring states are making $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 more per year than right here in Indiana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I honestly can't remember the exact working conditions in my own head right now, but I do know that Indiana, just in general, is a lower median nurse salary, and I mean a lower salary in general compared to other states. But nursing is nursing. It's the same job no matter where you go. It is the same job across lines. Nursing is nursing. And so to me, I think the job is the same no matter where you are, and it's just as hard, and it doesn't get taken into consideration. And I just think nurses in general are just viewed as a body. This corporations view them as a body.
It's unfortunate, and it's you said it's the same job anywhere, but it's also, it's almost even harder, the irony in that places like Indiana, where we don't have those strong unions that can bargain for nurse to patient ratios, it's actually harder because you have to do more with less, and then on top of that, you're poorly compensated. It's a real double whammy sort of situation.
Yeah, and honestly, when I became a nurse, my dad was like, "Katie, you're about to start making so much money. You're about to start making crazy money." And I get out and I'm like, "Dad, I was expecting better than this." Like, I was expecting better than this. And, as time has gone on, they have tried to make adjustments and gone up a little bit. And I am not with a corporation I was with before, but in a year, I think I got like a 1.8% raise. That was it. And it was still under $40 an hour.
That doesn't keep in pace with inflation.
The
Fed aims for 2%, rarely ever hit it. We're running about 4% right now with Trump's tariffs and this war with Iran and everything else. So that means you're essentially taking a pay cut.
Yes. My wages have not kept up with how a pound of ground beef is $8. My wages have not kept up with that. About 3 years ago, it was $4. Like, it just has not kept up to pace of how it is, just daily living expenses and groceries, gas, things like that. It's so many nurses live that experience all the time. So many nurses I know work multiple jobs, and same thing with teachers. It's just, you are expected to do more with less, and
I can only imagine, because like working multiple jobs as a nurse, I see how hard my wife works. She works 12-hour shifts. I think we talked earlier, you said you work 12-hour shifts typically. You're wiped after one of those shifts, and it pretty much wipes you out for the whole next day too. Like, it's both physically demanding, obviously, but also it's emotionally taxing, the things you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, life and death situations. It takes a lot out of someone emotionally, and I don't think we give nearly enough weight to that sort of thing, and the recovery that takes for a person.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think I said earlier, it was day one of my nurse hangover, and that's how it feels, because I worked yesterday, and I work about 45, 50 minutes away from where I live, because there's only one hospital in town, and I didn't want to work in the hospital. Not anything against that hospital. I just wanted to work somewhere that I felt comfortable at. And so I went there, and it, I forget what I was saying. I'm so sorry. I just
you work at 12, and then you got basically an hour on either end of that. Yeah.
I just totally blanked. Yes. So it turns into a 14-hour day, an entire 14-hour day. And I get home, I have a kid who maybe will need a shower. If my mom doesn't have him take a shower at her house, or might want a snack, or wants me to lay with him, or wants to hang out with me. And it might be 10 o'clock before I even get out of my scrubs. And so, and then doing that 2 days in a row, I am wiped out. I can't imagine. And I try to pick up if I can, and I haven't much, but I try to pick up if I can an extra shift every now and then, or 6 hours, 8 hours, something, just to have a little bit of extra money. And it's so hard to even do that. It will completely throw me off all week, because it takes me at least 1 day, if not 2 days, to completely fully recover.
And can you imagine trying to go work another job during those extra days? I couldn't even imagine. It's got to be impossible.
No. I can't imagine either. And also with the job that I do now, I don't get health insurance through my employer, which is crazy to me as a nurse. I should be able to have health insurance, but so if you have even just multiple part-time jobs, you might run into that where you can't get health insurance. And, subsidies might be Marketplace might be $300 a month for just you, not even including your kid. So it's like working multiple jobs for what? Because at the end of the day, I feel like we're constantly just trying to dig ourselves back out of a hole. You know what I mean?
Oh, only in America can I even imagine healthcare workers not having health insurance? That is, it boggles the mind. Especially those employers should theoretically know the importance of having health insurance to all folks, not just their workforce. But my God, the irony there is incredibly rich. You mentioned the the possibility of blacklisting, right? And if you make a mistake or you say something about your employer, that can have repercussions beyond just your relationship with that employer, but all the others. And it turns out there's not a lot of competition in this industry. I think if we just focus on hospitals, and I think the associated, practices that go along with those hospitals, everything's sort of consolidated in the last 15, 20 years as one of the sort of knock-on effects from Obamacare that, Obamacare was a great improvement over the previous system. Did have unintended consequences, and one of them was this exceeding consolidation in the industry. Now I think you've got 5 basically hospital monopolies in many communities. Obviously, they're the only game in town. So you run into a problem with your employer, you make a mistake or something, God forbid, but also just you got a shitty boss. That happens sometimes, right? Where are you going to go? As a nurse, as a healthcare employee, you really don't have a lot of options. There's not a lot of competition in the industry. And if we're going to treat the industry the way we do as a business, there should be more competition. So it's we want to have it both ways, right? We want to have the privatized industry, but then we give them these sort of monopoly benefits that should be reserved for things like publicly held companies or publicly held industries.
Yeah, that is one of probably the biggest problems in Indiana, I would say, is the healthcare monopoly that we have. When one system owns 70% of the hospitals, it lowers the ability for nurses to find jobs. And, like if they get blacklisted, they might not be able to go to another facility that is near them. And you can run into, even if you are employed by that hospital and they carry a certain type of insurance, and for that type of insurance, or the cheapest kind that you can get through your employer, you have to see that system's doctor. Well, let's say hypothetically you grow up somewhere else and they don't have that I want to say brand, because that's the best way I can think of it, that brand, but that corporation there, and you go and see another doctor and you've been seeing them for years and you're not changing. You get stuck with that pay that you have to pay to the other, or to your doctor when you go to see them. And it's a complete monopoly that has taken over our entire healthcare system as a whole. But Indiana in itself, and I just say this maybe because I am a nurse and I'm a little cynical, but I mean, it's getting to the point where I'm like, all right, this is the worst. This healthcare system is absolutely awful. And something has got to give, because if not, I don't know what's going to happen in the next 5-10 years.
And then certainly other states have these problems as well, but it's especially pronounced here. I think the healthcare industry, between the big hospital monopolies, we're talking about IU Health and Ascension, I think, and Eskenazi and the St. Francis, and yeah, so only a handful dominate the whole state. And gee, why do the big companies get everything they want, and the onus, and the difficulties fall on employees like nurses? And it's because, wouldn't you know it, these big healthcare corporations are some of the largest donors to our elected officials in Indianapolis, particularly the Republicans, because they hold most of the elected offices. And it's this vicious cycle where they get a friendly regulatory environment for themselves, and as such have more money to feed right back into the political system.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's not even just the healthcare systems, it's pharma, like the pharmaceutical companies, Eli Lilly, Pfizer. They are paying the electric companies. All of it is, it all just is a cycle, and it's just constant, and you can trace it back through years of candidates that they have paid off, or I want to say paid off, but paid to do their bidding. And it's, at the end of the day, it goes back to money and politics being an absolute cancer to society and needs to be handled. But yeah, it all just is a big old feedback loop.
It's a big, gross human centipede of money. It's nasty and gross. And I hope I invoked a gross image to give you the ick when thinking about our political system and all the money involved. And well, to your point, you mentioned the utilities, also big Republican donors, certainly to Democrats too, not to the same extent, obviously, but listen, if they're gonna find a friendly ear, they're gonna grease the wheels, right? Yeah. But utilities are one of those things. Just like hospitals, there's not really any other game in town. It would be silly to have another game in town. Inefficient, just doesn't work that way. Obviously, hospitals, not the same extent as utilities. You're only going to have one power company, right? But in most towns, you're only going to have one hospital. You're lucky if you got two. Those things where it doesn't make sense to have competition, they should be publicly managed. They should be publicly run. We should have something like Medicare for all.
Yeah, and just even in general, over time, that saves so Medicare for all saves so much money. Over time, that saves so much money than what is literally bleeding in the healthcare system now. Because a lot of these hospitals go without payment because people literally cannot pay tens of thousands of dollars worth of hospital bills. Everybody is an emergency away from one medical emergency away from bankruptcy. And most, if not the majority of people, are closer to that than they are becoming a millionaire. And we need things that will put a public option there to, lift up the masses and to just help the system overall. And that is just one of the small ways that it can be done.
And you mentioned a public option. That was one of those things. We talked about Obamacare and some of the shortcomings and the unintended consequences. One of the things that happened in 2009 is that a public option was on the table, and we talked about doing it, and it was certain Democrats that were in office that wouldn't go ahead with that. They were lobbied by the insurance industry and by the healthcare industry to keep that off of the table. And that isn't even a full nationalized healthcare system that we're talking about. That was just like a public option, which would kind of keep the private sector honest. And we couldn't even get that across the table. And now, so much of the Affordable Care Act has had its legs cut out from under it, that it's teetering. The premiums have gone through the roof. The subsidies have been cut. Republicans have whittled it from its already, meager improvements down to essentially nothing. So, I think it might be time to go back to the drawing board and look at reintroducing, at the very least, a public option. Definitely, I want to see federal candidates talk about Medicare for all. If they're not doing so, you got to go big. And even if you don't actually want to see the Medicare for all, even if you only think the public option is the right fit, you got to aim big. And this is my criticism of Democrats typically for the entire last generation, is that they start their negotiating from the center position. Well, if you want to get to the center position, you start extreme and negotiate back from there. If you start your negotiations from the center, you're going to get crumbs at best.
Yeah. And, Medicare for all is the popular opinion of the country. The majority of people want a single payer healthcare system because most people are uninsured. We have such a high number of uninsured people in the country, but in Indiana alone, I mean, it's crazy. And I know that I'm uninsured. My mom's uninsured, and it's my kid's uninsured. He was on Medicaid and got kicked off of it. And it is unfortunate that people who don't have, some people, because my problem is I'm at that wage level that it's a little bit too much to get help, but not enough to ever, keep up with things. Or even just when I was looking for health insurance, when I looked on the marketplace, it was at least $300 for just me, not even me and my kid. And it didn't have dental insurance. So I'm like, why even waste money? Why even waste my money on this? I guess I'll just pay out of pocket to see my doctor and put everything else off, because that is the reality so many people are facing. And, it's truly shameful in a civilized society and in an industrialized country to have people living in this situation. But that's how it is. And it's not even, it's worse for so many other people too. And
you said, it's popular. People see it, we're connected to the rest of the world. It's only a click away. We see that the rest of the industrialized world has some sort of universal health care that is paid for by taxes. They don't have this ridiculously privatized system like we have here. We see that it costs us a ton of money, and we have worse outcomes. And yet, no movement, hardly at all. Over 80 years since I think Truman was proposing a universal health care system right after World War II, and they called it socialism then, and they've called it socialism every time we've tried to make any improvements to the healthcare system. Medicare is socialism. It kind of is. We should lean into that, because it's popular.
Like, it is. And the thing is, it's always the people who are able to get those benefits who are the ones who are like, I'm saying this as my dad. My dad and I, like I said, completely different political. He is always screaming about communism, socialism, communism. So I'm like, dude, you have Medicare. Like, that's single payer. And he said, no, it's not. And he said, I paid for it. And I said, and how many people are you? One. Like, it is something that is a normalized thing that our tax dollars, I want my tax dollars to give people healthcare. I want my tax dollars to lower medications. I want my tax dollars to help people buy food if they need it. That is what I want my tax dollars going to. And it's something that so many other people are in the same boat. They don't want their money spent in a different country doing whatever. They want their money spent at home on people.
And that's generations and generations of propaganda that has gotten to your father and my father as well.
Ate his brain.
Oh yeah, Rush Limbaugh made my dad's brain.
Oh
yeah,
him too. I remember. I have distinct memories of riding in the back of my dad's Buick car. He'd be smoking a cigarette in the morning and listening to Rush Limbaugh, and that was what I have distinct memories of it. And I think that's why I am so just outspoken today about the way that I feel, because I grew up in that home. Like, that was what I grew up with. My dad's still, he's come around on a lot of things, but he still believes climate change is a hoax. So
have you looked outside this week, my guy?
I said, Dad, I can't breathe. It is so hot out. Like, what do you mean? It was warm on Christmas this year. I'm pretty sure the kids were playing outside.
Well, but humans didn't cause that. That was God.
That was God. Yeah, it's him telling us that we're all going to hell for being communists, I guess.
Well, there's nothing more American than billionaires paying millionaires to tell people who are nowhere near that income threshold to hate things that would benefit them, and hating taxes, right? Even though it's better bang for your buck, and we don't talk about that enough. I think of Bernie Sanders and his universal health care plan back in 2016 and 2020 when he was running for president and talking about it, and all they harp on is, would taxes go up? Well, yeah, taxes. It's going to cost a certain amount of taxes to pay for universal health care for everybody, but the savings you would get in not paying for private health insurance, say it would cost every American $4,000 a year in taxes for a universal health care system. You're paying $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a year now for a private health care system that doesn't even cover everything. You still have co-pays afterwards and poor outcomes. Not everything's even covered. It's insane how much we've been mentally poisoned by capital.
Yeah, no, it is one of many issues with the entire country as a whole, but you're going to be spending less money in the long run. So I don't get where why people are like, oh, I'm going to have to pay more in taxes, but you're going to be saving $6,000 that year because you're not going to be spending that in your monthly premiums and your, deductibles and all of the things. And it works. It is a popular opinion, and it makes me so angry that more people don't constantly push for a single payer healthcare system. And it should be.
Well,
It should be like a
taking
standard,
that money
honestly.
and putting it right where we need it and into people's care directly and into communities. That's communism. But if we send all that money to administrators and higher ups so they can buy vacation homes and yachts, that's the American way.
Well, $250.
USA. USA.
Yeah, I know. Oh shoot. And what kills me about it, truthfully, is the fact that so many people just don't realize that we as a collective, as human beings, as normal everyday people who don't have 8 zeros in their bank account, you know what I mean, everyday people who work, who go do things, who don't own a yacht, like there are more of us than there are them, and they control so much of everything. And that's what kills me, is a lot of people just don't get that. Like, we're more alike than you are with them. Like, we have more in common than you have with the billionaires. And a lot of my dad doesn't get it. I can tell you that. I'm like,
it's divide and conquer. It's it's the oldest play in the book, and you keep the working people fighting with each other while you make off with the bag. And we talked about nurses unionizing, and how in some states they have powerful nurses unions and then be able to negotiate for better wages and working conditions in their areas. And we don't have that here in Indiana as much. And I think one of the hurdles to unionizing your industry and my wife's industry in particular is the lack of solidarity. And so much of that is downstream of all the information space and the propaganda that you hear about unions and the virtues of capitalism or whatever. But she'll talk to some of her coworkers and I think they support Trump, they support Republicans for whatever reason, and they don't realize that their support for those politicians and the policies that they enact are hurting you and your coworkers. And it takes somebody who's a little more plugged in to talk about that. And then, boy, to your point, just nursing takes up so much of your wavelength. It's hard to stay plugged into politics and all of those things in your downtime to even inform yourself about that and have those discussions with your coworkers.
Yeah, and I also think another part to that is not even just like people who voted for Trump, who support Trump, who are Republicans, but people who just don't vote. I know a lot of nurses who just literally don't vote, and because they are also, like so many other people, just disillusioned and disenfranchised, and feel like their voice doesn't matter, what they say does not matter, and no matter what they do, it's not going to change their everyday, day-to-day life existence. And just sometimes you just have to break it down for them, because I've had coworkers who will be talking about staffing or patient loads, and we'll talk about how we're not guaranteed this, or we don't have enough nurses for this, but we have to be pulled to do this, and just in general. And I have heard from multiple nurses, we need a union, but they just don't realize how hard it is to unionize in Indiana as a whole, because of the inability to collectively bargain in the state. And And it's also, you have administrators who, I mean, let me say, I had a boss who was very much disagreed with me politically, and I just saying, I think that makes it kind of hard too, because they also have been fed and constant just propaganda about unions and how they're not any good for people and how they're not good for the workforce. And just like my dad, sorry, I bring everything back to him, but genuinely, like, so many people just do not see the benefit of a union, that it is hard to be able to get the solidarity and to get the people who want to organize or even just put themselves at risk to lose their job.
And your dad is a good avatar for the average American who's been, fed these lies often for their entire life. And we're just such an individualized society. I think we've been fed this myth of rugged individualism, that everything we do is on our own, and you forge out into the wilderness.
By the bootstraps.
Right, the bootstraps. When really, all of the folks that are, if you look at the super rich right now, you look at your Elon Musk, for example, where does all his money come from? Government contracts. The man is the biggest welfare queen on the face of the earth.
I was about to say, the biggest welfare queen, like the biggest welfare queen. But then you have people who think Elon Musk is a genius and would think it's okay that he has all of these government contracts, but God forbid the poor family gets Coke and cupcakes on their food stamp card because our tax dollars are not paying for that. And it's just like, the disconnect is it's so like mind-boggling, because we have made Elon Musk a trillionaire, and you are concerned about your tax dollars paying for Coke. It's just very unserious. I have a hard time taking it seriously, because it's so.
I always think of it's a great political cartoon from a few years ago. I think it's out of Australia, because the guy, the billionaire avatar in this cartoon, very much looks like Rupert Murdoch, if he isn't actually supposed to be Rupert Murdoch. But it's him. He's sitting at a table with a guy in a yellow vest, obviously stand-in for a blue collar worker, and then you got an immigrant at the table, right? And you see everybody's got a plate, and Rupert Murdoch, the billionaire or whatever, he's got a plate, he's got a mountain of cookies, right? And then the blue collar worker has one cookie, and the billionaire says, "Hey mate, better watch out, that immigrant's coming for your cookie." And it works. It works
every time.
Always works.
And it's just years and years of propaganda. And I mean, not even just immigrants, Black people, brown people, all people that are different than them, that believe different than them, that look different than them. And it's just, it's their boogeyman. It's but it's how society has been engineered by the people who do control the levers of power to keep us all fighting over stupid stuff. And when I say us, I mean like people in general, keep people fighting over stupid stuff and not realizing that we are literally being robbed under our nose. Like, they're doing some shiesty stuff. And, people are mad about bathrooms. It's like, there are bigger fish to fry here.
So I guess as we begin to wrap up, you're out there, you're talking to voters as you're running for office, you're talking to coworkers. Are people starting to get it? Is it getting bad to the point where people are like, "Hey, now wait a second," and we might be able to turn the corner because of it?
I think yes and no. I think some people still have their loyalty to like Donald Trump. Okay. But they also feel the everyday effects of the things that he's done, the tariffs, the war, and just the war in general. People do not like that. And data centers, that's like a big thing. And I think that is something that has opened people's eyes to see, oh, the Republicans that are in office, both at the federal and state level, both are okay with this. Like, they're cool with it. And I think that is something that is making people feel it a little bit more. But I do think people just want somebody to actually like stand up for something good, stand up for something, and, just put people in the community before everything else.
Well, Katie, I know that if you find yourself in Indianapolis come the first of next year after winning this election, you will stand for something and stand up for the people there in Marion and the rest of House District 31. So how can folks find out more about you, find out about your campaign, maybe get connected to volunteer and or donate?
Yeah, so you can find my campaign on Facebook. That's where we have the most followers. It's Katie Robbins for Indiana. Robbins is spelled with one B. I always tell people that because it gets spelled two B's all the time. And then my website is katierobbinsforindiana.com. And there's a tab there that you can see events that we have coming up, sign up to volunteer, sign up for a newsletter, donate, read about me, and yeah.
Well, very good. And I will link to all of those in the show notes. So have folks have a way to get a hold of you. But and I look forward to hopefully talking to you again between now and November. But until that time, Katie, thank you so much for joining me here tonight on the Who's Left podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Hey, once again, that was Katie Robbins, mom, nurse, and candidate for State House District 31 up there in Marion. And tonight's conversation was heavy on commiseration. I hope to talk to Katie again and talk about what kind of solutions we can bring to the table here in our state and beyond. But for now, I will send you to her website at katierobbinsforindiana.com, where you can learn more about her platform, volunteer opportunities, and of course, how to donate to her campaign. I will link that in the show notes, which will be available later tonight at progressiveindiana.net. You can find all of my work there, as well as that of other left-leaning Hoosier voices, and we can't do it without your support, so please consider contributing to Who's Left and the wider network with a paid subscription if you're able. This independent media project relies solely on the generosity of kind patrons like you to make this information available for free to everybody. Again, that's at progressiveindiana.net. We could also really use a follow on social media at Progressive Indiana Network on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel at the same handle. Over on Blue Sky and TikTok, we are at PIN Indiana. I will be back Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. with Who's Left This Week, Indiana's only unapologetically progressive Sunday morning politics show. My guests include another Central Indiana State House candidate in the form of Lauren Cole and Bloomington DSA organizer and activist Bryce Green. We will discuss the week's top Indiana stories plus U.S. and international news through a Hoosier lens. Tune in on YouTube, Facebook Live, or on Substack Live at progressiveindiana.net. And a programming note, on YouTube, we will be live only on the Progressive Indiana Network channel going forward. You'll still be able to catch the replay on the Who's Left feed. Thanks again to Katie Robbins for a great discussion, and thank you for watching. Connect with me online at whosleft.us on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads, at Who's Left on all the rest. Send me a direct message, any of those sites, with feedback, tips, ideas, and concerns, or email me directly at scott@whosleft.us. Last thing, please forward the show to a friend and have them pass it on to. Let's keep building this project and a truly democratic state, one conversation at a time. Until the next one, this has been the Who's Left podcast. I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.